Hey there, my name is Jay and I work in Voiceover, and welcome to the second part of this series where I'm talking through all the stuff that I wish I had known when I was starting out. Today, we're going to talk through how to set up your recording space and where's the best place to do it in your home, or if you're on the road and you need a temporary space to either record an audition last minute, or if you even need to record a gig that you've booked and they need the tapes quick or something like that. So I'll walk through my decision-making process on how I break that down. Now, as I said in the last video of this series, your recording space is the most important part of your setup. And a phrase that I hear often in voiceover is a $100 microphone in a good room is going to sound better than a $10,000 microphone in a bad room. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you're recording an audiobook on the most beautiful, expensive $10,000 microphone, but you're located under a highway overpass, it's going to be a pretty hard book to listen to. So how do we get good recording audio quality wherever we are? Well, first, I'd like to just take a second to talk about sound itself. So sound, according to Wikipedia, is a vibration that propagates as an acoustic wave through a transmission medium, which can be either a gas, liquid, or solid. To break that down a little bit, think about a guitar. If you pluck a guitar string or strum a guitar string, that string vibrates, which then vibrates the air right around it. Now, those vibrations then move further and further out, turning into waves, which then travel into the room through the space and eventually hitting our ears where we hear the music. Now, as those sound waves move through the room, they'll interact with the world in a few different ways. Now, if you'll remember, they'll move through a transmission medium, which can be gas, in other words, air, liquid, which can be anything like whales talking to each other, they emit sound through water, or solid. So the sound waves will interact with the physical room and objects in it, and the waves will actually enter into those. So those sound waves, as they go into the space, they'll either reflect off of things or they'll be absorbed into things. Now, as they reflect off of things, think about if you sing or speak in a concrete tunnel, for example, or a stairwell. The echoes that you hear as you speak or sing, your sound waves are going off, bouncing off of the walls, ricocheting all over the place and coming back to you in that really notable echo. With sound going into objects and being absorbed into them, it'll either resonate or it'll diffuse and dissipate a bit. And it'll do that to different degrees depending on the material. For example, think of a pillow, or like when we don't want to be heard, we'll either scream into a pillow or we'll go into the other room and shut the door. In the instance of the pillow, as the sound waves go out, the sound waves of our voice are getting broken up by the pillow and diffused and spread out so that the sound waves as they come out the other side are really, really weak and hard to hear. With a door or a wall, the sound waves just can't penetrate them very well, and it makes it harder for us to hear a person's voice. So how do we use all that information about sound for your recording space? Well, the first thing I'll do when I'm trying to figure out where I want to set up is I'll walk around and see if there's a place that offers naturally good acoustic isolation. What does that mean? Well, acoustic isolation is simply trying to keep your microphone isolated from any vibrations or any sounds that aren't your vocal cords, any sound coming in or out of your recording space. One way to think about it is, where's a place that has as much mass between my microphone and any noise or sound that I don't want in my recordings? Is there a room that has more walls between it and the outside, my neighbors, the communal living spaces in my home? The more walls, the more mass between my microphone and that noise, the better. The next thing I'll do is, if I've got options there, if say there's one closet that's really well isolated, but there's one that's basically equally isolated, does one of them have better acoustic treatment inside? Now, what is acoustic treatment? Now, there are a couple ways that I think about it. Here are a few examples of rooms in my apartment and in my apartment building that have different levels of acoustic treatment naturally. Test 1 2 3. 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 Now, some of those rooms sounded better in terms of recording audio quality than others. And the reason why was because, again, there were fewer sound reflections and more acoustic absorbing material in those rooms naturally. So again, for your recording space, you're going to want as few reflections as you can manage, as much absorbent material as you can pack in there, and that's going to give you, generally speaking, good recording audio quality. Now, two ways to sort of clarify those concepts for yourself even further, and a couple exercises that I use to diagnose my recording spaces and evaluate where I might want a little bit more acoustic treatment. Well, here we go. The first one, imagine you're holding a little rubber ball that's particularly bouncy. Stand in your recording space or your potential recording space and just imagine throwing that little rubber ball at everything, every surface, every object. I'm talking the walls, the furniture, the cat, the house plants. Now, for the sake of the exercise, let's say that the rubber ball is completely harmless and it's not going to break, harm, knock anything over, but if it can bounce off of it, it bounces off of it. Say I throw it at the wall, it bounces off the wall, hits the table, goes to a chair, lands on the floor, which has a carpet, and it just kind of thuds there and it stops bouncing. Each of those bounces you can consider a sound reflection. So if I throw the ball and I notice there's a space in my room where it's just like bouncing around a ton, chances are that spot of your room is going to have quite a few acoustic reflections, and you can put a few more absorbent materials there, which brings us to the next exercise. So imagine that rubber ball and just switch it out for a little metal ball. Same deal, it's not going to hurt, harm, break, knock anything over. And do the same thing. Toss it at each and every object and surface in your room. And if that little metal ball makes a sound, then that material isn't going to absorb sound very well. So if I throw it at, say, the hardwood floor, it's going to thud, ting, and it's going to make a sound. The hardwood floor isn't going to absorb sound very well. Conversely, if I toss it at a carpeted floor, it's going to thud pretty dully. So that carpeted floor is much more absorbent acoustically than a hardwood floor. As we look around and throw it at everything in our potential recording space, we want to hear nothing. As silent as that metal ball can be, the more absorbent materials you've got in there, the better your recording quality is going to sound. Now, beyond things that you might just have lying around your house that you could use as acoustic treatment, things like couch cushions, old pillows, old comforters, blankets, anything that passes that metal ball test that you've just got lying around, you can also pick some stuff up for purchase if you're looking for a more professional solution. The first thing that I'd recommend taking a look at are moving blankets. A lot of my colleagues, this was their first vocal booth ever. They would just buy a round of these and then build sort of a PVC pipe cage that they would just plop everything down in for their recording equipment, put it in the corner of their living room, and they've got a vocal booth. In fact, some vocal booths for sale are basically just moving blankets on exactly that, a PVC pipe like this one here. Now, you'll note this is much more expensive than if you do it yourself, which is why I recommend just snagging the materials and doing it your own way. Now, the next thing you could do is pick up professional acoustic treatment. This is what I use in my booth. This is the Isolé sound barrier. This has what's called mass-loaded vinyl in there, so it's a little bit of soundproofing. They've also got sound sheets. There's a ton of professional products. This is the one that I use, though. And the last thing that you might look at is insulation. This is specifically soundproof isolation, but you can just get the stuff from Home Depot. So back to our decision tree, we've got a place that's naturally isolated as best we can, which could just be the corner of our living room. Then naturally acoustically treated. If, say, you've got a closet, that's a great option because you don't have to invest too much extra. You've got clothes hanging there, which are great natural sound absorbers. The next thing I'll do is consider if I can find a place where I can set up my recording equipment more or less indefinitely. And the reason for this one goes beyond getting good sound, but if I don't have to set up and take down my entire recording setup and my acoustic treatment every time I want to do an audition, I'm going to submit more auditions and I'm going to get more consistent sound. That consistency can go a long way down the line in saving you time and tweaking your space and whatnot. And then the last thing, is there a place where I'm going to be comfortable recording for hours at a time? If you're comfortable there and it's a place where you want to spend time, I mean, this is your job. If you hate going to do your job, if you hate having to set it up every time, if you are just hunched over a little laptop, breathing heavily into this microphone, it's going to be hard for you to show up. So make it comfortable for yourself. So with those things in mind, finding a place that's really well isolated or as isolated as we can get. Again, this could just be your bedroom versus your living room. Then, does it have natural acoustic treatment? Can I set up for a long time? And then am I going to be comfortable there for a long time? Once I've got a place that ticks those boxes as best I can, I'll set up my recording equipment and give it a shot. So this is my hallway closet. It's got some good acoustic treatment naturally, but it doesn't tick the first box. It's not very well isolated. As you can see, it's right in the hallway there. So people would be walking by constantly. Well, my wife would be walking by constantly. It would make life difficult for her, and I'm not going to be able to set up there long term. Not to mention, it doesn't look very comfortable. So the next thing I could do is make myself a pillow fort. Now, probably not the most permanent solution, but again, this is my go-to when I'm on the road. Literally, I'll just strip the cushions like this, plop my microphone right in the middle here, probably as far back as I can get it, and there we go. The last thing I'll do is drape a blanket over top to block any of the sound coming at it from here, and I'm good to go. Now, again, this isn't going to be very comfortable, and it's probably not the most isolated place. So if I could, I might take this situation to a closet or something somewhere else. As you can tell, I'm already sweating because of this. It's hot here in Brooklyn. Now, admittedly, my apartment's pretty small, and it's hard to find a place that offers good acoustic isolation, particularly because I live in a Brooklyn apartment building, and there's just noise everywhere. So what I opted for was this, which is my entry closet, and I chose this because I could set up my equipment here permanently, which would lead to me doing more auditions and I would get more consistent sound. And then beyond that, I could just make myself comfortable in there, make it my workspace. Now, since then, I've built it out to be a professional booth, so I've got a nice thick door here that I threw on essentially a room that I built within my closet. This is sheetrock that's packed with about 3.5 inches of insulation. So all of that helps to further isolate myself. So if you're doing this professionally, that's something you might invest in. And beyond that, I've got acoustic treatment panels everywhere. So when I shut the door, I'm basically 360 degrees. That rubber ball test and the metal ball test, they're gonna pass everywhere. My desk even has towels draped over it so that reflections aren't going to come off of my desk. Now, two things that I wanted to talk about really briefly. So, armed with all that information, my hope is that you'll be able to go out and find a space for yourself to make some really great recordings. If you've got any questions, please leave them down below or reach out to me on my website and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you think you've got some ways to improve on anything I said here, please let me know and help everybody else out as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodles.